been called the most important case ever tried in El Paso. Good evening, I'm Carrie Matson. Erica Castillo has the night off.
I'm Nick Miller. The family of a maquila worker killed 7 years ago is settled out of court today with the company their daughter worked for. News Channel 9's Eric Pearson has been following the case and joins us live now. Eric, just why is this being called such a groundbreaking case?
Well, this is more than just a regular, simple civil trial, Nick. This is the first time someone from another country has sued a United States multinational corporation in U.S. courts. Not only that, but it brings up an important issue. Are U.S. companies operating abroad using different safety standards for different countries? Now, Scherr says this settlement is far-reaching from a business point of view. Scherr says that this ends the double standard, or it could end the double standard that companies use abroad, making them more accountable from safety standards and accountability in any country they choose. Scherr says those kind of standards have been neglected in the past. We had trouble reaching Conoco's attorney for comment today.
Today, the Insider Exclusive goes behind the headlines in Worker Safety U.S. Corporate Responsibilities to examine how Jim Scherr and Sam Legate, partners at Scherr and Legate, successfully set a new legal precedent requiring multinational corporations to provide Mexican workers with the same work safety standards and with the same respect, dignity, and protection by the company, whether they make $35 a week or $1,000 a week. They expose the double standard that multinational companies have for the safety of their workers. All workers are entitled to and should demand safe working conditions. This case asks an American court to hold a U.S. company equally responsible for the management decisions which directly affect the lives of Mexican workers. And that's what this case is all about. Most lawyers didn't want to pursue litigation because they thought it was too difficult a case to win. But this was personal for Jim and Sam. Jim and Sam have earned the highest respect from citizens and lawyers alike as two of the best trial lawyers in El Paso, in Texas, and in the nation. And because of that, they are driven to fight for people who have been harmed by the willful or negligent actions of others. Their goal is not only to get justice for their clients, but to make sure that similar incidents don't ever happen again.
Hi, I'm Steve Murphy, and this is the Insider Exclusive, live from El Paso, Texas.
It's my great pleasure to introduce Jim Scherr and Sam Legate to the show. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Tell our audience a little bit about the type of law that your firm practices.
Our firm is a victims' rights firm. We represent people who would never have access to the legal system unless lawyers like us undertook their case for them to give them justice.
And when you say never have access, normally people think that you have to pay a lawyer in order for them to represent you. But you take cases on contingency, meaning that if it's a case you take on, if you lose the case, you don't get paid anything. But if you win it, obviously, you're going to be paid, whatever you've agreed to, correct?
Yes, sir.
There are many types of law that you both can practice. You could be corporate lawyers. Why do you choose this type of law, Sam?
Well, because we get to help the little guy. And it's a lot more satisfying. Probably most people go into law thinking they're going to help somebody.
Yeah.
A person, not a big corporation or, And so it's very, very satisfying when you're finished with the case just to know that the person is better off at the end of it than at the beginning. Mm-hmm. And that you helped them.
We have a case today. It's a rather unusual case, and it's a case where an American company put at risk a Mexican citizen. I want you to tell our audience a little bit about this case, Jim.
This is probably one of the most important cases we've handled. Lorena Mendoza was an employee who went to work for a U.S. company in Ciudad Juarez. She went there because she wanted to work for a U.S. company. She found that it would be a future for her. She was hired as an accountant. Well, the company, Contico, chose. They had a huge facility in Ciudad Juarez, but they found that Delphi was coming in, taking their employees. Contico was paying $24 a week to the employees for a 48-hour work week. Delphi was paying a little more, so they were losing employees. Contico chose to find a community where they could control the workforce. They went to a place called Palomas, Mexico. Palomas is on the border with the place that the U.S., Columbus, New Mexico, where Pancho Villa raided into the U.S. It's the only place that had been raided into the U.S. ever at that point. And Contico chose to set up a system for their new employees. They hired, by the way, at $22 a week. Instead of paying them, they hired 100 people, but instead of paying them with paychecks or using the local bank that was there, Contico decided it was cheaper to send their employees, two of them, a driver and Lorena from Juarez, on the same road in about 90 miles at the same time on the same day of the week, delivering cash payroll in a suitcase from Juarez to Palomas. It was an extremely dangerous undertaking, as one could imagine. They even instructed Lorena to stick the suitcase, the briefcase, underneath her seat as they went through the checkpoints as they were driving from Juarez to Palomas.
And everybody knew that she was carrying cash. Right. And what happened?
Well, as you can imagine, one day, Lorena, we discovered this after lengthy work in this case. Lorena and the driver, their car was stopped on that Friday morning by some vehicles. They were taken out into the desert. The people who took them out there were apparently involved in drug dealing. They attempted to do something to Lorena. The driver stepped in. The people shot the driver. They put Lorena and the driver alive in the trunk of the car, poured gasoline over the car, and lit it on fire. They were burned alive in the trunk of the car.
Wow, that is horrible. When you first heard of this case, this is kind of, and we're going to talk about some of the challenges you had, this is kind of a difficult case because never before had a U.S. company been held responsible for what took place in another country, correct? To a foreign national, right?
Well, it was a very difficult case. There was a little bit of precedent before that.
Yeah.
But the evidentiary proof to prove up what happened was an extremely difficult undertaking to get evidence in a foreign country. And then what laws should apply? The first argument was, well, this should all be done in Mexico.
Right.
You know, Mexican law should apply. Well, of course, under Mexican law, there's no recovery for the family whose daughter was burned alive. Nothing. So, of course, Contico wanted to keep it in Mexico. We brought the suit here in the United States.
And under what grounds? Under what premise?
Well, the legal theory is very similar to the concept. If you shoot a rocket from the United States into Mexico and it kills someone in Mexico, well, the tort or the wrongdoing took place in the United States.
And the wrongdoing which took place in this case was actually the decision by an American company to put someone in harm's way when there were better ways of delivering payroll, right?
Right. There was a armored car that went every day to the bank from Juarez to Palomas and could easily have taken the payroll. They just didn't want to pay the money.
There was even a branch of the bank right there in Paloma, right?
Right, and that's what the armored car did every day. Yeah. He would take money to and from the bank over there in Palomas. And they could have just had an account at the bank, obviously, and walked across the street and done their payroll that way.
Now, there's not a lot of law firms that would have taken on a case like this, right? This is a difficult case to prove.
Right, but you know, we're very lucky because things come into the office that aren't right. And we've been very fortunate in that we had the economic resources to take it on.
Yeah.
To hire the law professor down at UT to come down, the guy who wrote Conflicts of Law, to come educate our court here on why it was appropriate to bring the case here. To hire P. Palmer, who I believe you're going to talk to, an ex-CIA director from Mexico, to be an expert about what goes on in Mexico.
Also, I think after the CIA, he had his own private security firms, who he was advising foreign companies about
Exactly.
how they should handle their employees and what kind of safety they should have, right?
In Mexico, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in other countries too. But.
This case to me brought up this issue about a double standard that even after your case still exists with a lot of American corporations, right?
Yes, sir.
Where they think the value of a foreign national is less than an American worker. That's not right, is it?
What makes a human being less valuable because they live across a man-made boundary?
Mm-hmm.
That human being is valuable, as important to that family as they are to anyone in this country.
As a result of this case, the Contico case, how are American corporations held accountable today?
Well, there is now legal precedent in the United States that can make a U.S. company responsible for actions, wrongdoings they do in foreign countries.
Based on this case? Okay. We have with us today Pete Palmer, who, as you mentioned, is a former CIA director in Mexico, and had a private security firm where he advised companies about safety measures that they put in place. We're going to bring him on right now so he can discuss a little bit about what Contico and other companies should have done and should be doing, right?
Exactly.
So let's do that right now. It is my great pleasure to introduce Pete Palmer to the show. Welcome to the show, Pete.
Thanks so much.
You have a very interesting background. You work for the CIA. You were primarily in Mexico, right?
No, all over Latin America.
All over Latin America. And you have a great deal of experience working with the local people as well as companies and the government and that sort of thing. Tell our audience, share with our audience a little bit about the security issues. You also owned a private security company after you retired from the CIA, but share with our audience the security issues that American corporations, or for that matter, your experience with the CIA, that would help companies know what they should be doing in foreign lands, especially in Mexico.
Sure. The biggest thing that occurs to me that I derived from the CIA that had applicability to keeping people safe, which after all was the objective, try to keep people safe before problems occur rather than deal with after bad things have happened, as in the Mendoza case. But the biggie is, I think, that in the espionage world, your main commitment is to keeping your asset agent safe. Mm-hmm. And so how do you keep them safe? Well, you don't behave stupidly. You feel what's around you, you sense what's around you, you sense danger, okay, and then you abort the meeting. You behave appropriately so as to not lead whoever may be watching you to discover who you're seeing or who you're protecting. This had direct applicability to the crime situation, someplace like Mexico City or Bogota or almost anywhere in Latin America, where the criminals are out there and they're going to go after somebody. So you can't stop them from behaving that way, but hopefully you get them to go after Jim instead of me. Okay, so the whole behavior process is if you behave in a certain kind of way, you'll dissuade them because you can reduce the element of surprise. Mm-hmm. You'll let them know that you see them. And once they know that you see them, they're likely to go after somebody else because they don't really care whether it's you or Jim or me. They just want somebody that's going to give them some of what they want. Mm-hmm. And the other big thing that I did was I started databasing. When I started the business, I started keeping track of every crime I could find out about, which was mainly reading all the newspapers that were published in Mexico on a regular basis, and databasing all kinds of crime. Nobody in Mexico was doing that. So all of a sudden I became the wise one because I actually knew stuff.
Even the police weren't doing it?
No, not at all. Not at all. They were, police, sadly, in many instances are part of the problem rather than part of the solution. Mm-hmm. So they weren't necessarily after solving things or precluding them, where that was, of course, what I want to do is A, preclude it, and if I couldn't preclude it, then try to help people fix it.
So would you be able, and when you identify some of these crimes, the types of crimes, who was committing them, you must have gathered a lot of intelligence on
You gain
that.
a sense. You gain a sense of who is likely to have committed it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do you prove it? No. Frequently I found myself following up after a truck hijacking, interviewing the truck driver. And I knew he was lying to me. I didn't know if he was lying about something that mattered to me or something that mattered to him.
How would you know he's lying to you?
Just the behavior part of it. You just pick up on, looking at the right and the left and all the stuff that you've read about in terms of body language. Well, that's there. And then you start realizing that they're breaking their fluidity and what they're saying to you. And there's something wrong. You don't know necessarily what's wrong. You find it when you're dealing with somebody in the stand, I'm sure. And you know something's wrong.
Right.
You may or may not, it may not be important to you, important to him.
Companies operating in Mexico today, say American companies, it would do them a lot of good to hire someone like yourself or a security firm so that they could not only bring them in within the firm and find out who's really telling the truth about what's going on, but also to prevent other sorts of problems, because due to this case, American companies now are responsible for their actions in Mexico, wouldn't it?
Well, I think that many of them, I have a lot of my clients in Mexico were multinationals.
Yeah.
And the vast majority of them, I think, behaved responsibly. There is obviously going to be, in a case like this, the Mendoza case, was grotesque. Grotesque in terms of irresponsibility, grotesque in terms of respect of life, respect of caring about somebody that's so far down the tote pole.
Is that something that you teach the companies, well, when you were working, that you taught the companies to try and respect the $35 a week worker as well as your corporate
I
executive?
didn't try to teach them ethics, no. Yeah. But what I did try to do was set up systems for them that would keep people and products safe. If I'm keeping products safe, I'm keeping people safe. If I'm keeping money safe, I'm keeping the people carry it safe.
You know, as folks watch this show today, they are wondering, how safe is it to do business in Mexico today?
I would say it's safe to do business, but you have to exercise prudence. Bromidally, I say, don't check your common sense in the airplane. Yeah. Bring it with you. Yeah. The same wisdom that helps you walk the streets of New York, God bless you, New York or Atlanta or any other major metropolitan area, some of those same skill sets have applicability there. What I've found oftentimes is that Hispanics would work for a multinational and think, oh, I disappear here, I don't exist. I'm not a threat, I'm not a problem, and virtually all of them got held up or assaulted one time or another.
Jim, his testimony in the case was invaluable, wasn't it?
Pete Palmer, former director of CIA in Mexico and Central America, was very, very critical on the case.
Because he could lay out to the jury exactly what Contigo should have been doing, correct?
He said what the standards are for them and what they should have done. With the evidence of what they didn't do and how bad it was very, very wonderful to have somebody with Mr. Palmer's credentials testifying and speaking on what the standards are and what they should have done.
Well, I want to thank you for coming all this way. You came from South Carolina.
Yeah.
Coming all this way for the show today. We really appreciate it.
This man is really special. This man picked up on this case when other people didn't see it. This man pursued it. And so it was an honor to work the case. It was so predictable. What happened was so predictable that it would make you cry. But this man was the one that pursued it, and I got to play.
That's why we're here today. Thank you very much.
Thank
Pete.
you.
What a case. What I like most about this case is you took on a case that most lawyers wouldn't handle. I mean, think about it. Different jurisdictions, and they're going to try their best to say it's not our problem, right? But you set a standard. And that's what I admire about the work that you did in this particular case. And it comes right back to taking care of the little guy, right? Lorena Mendoza. How did you get this case in the beginning, by the way?
Lorena's sister identified her remains. She's a medical doctor, and she's highly respected in Mexico, helping the Tarahumara Indians for free.
Yeah.
She sought legal counsel all over the country. No one took the case. She came in and talked with us and asked if we could just please help find out what happened to her sister, because the company told her they didn't know what happened.
And at that time, you didn't even know whether you would have a case, right? Because you didn't really know the facts, did you?
No.
Something smelled,
Yeah.
and we knew something was wrong.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank both of you for putting your heart and soul in this, because this is what American justice is supposed to be all about. And thanks for taking the time to be on our program.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for doing this for America.
Thanks for joining us. You can get more information about our guest and the issues at insiderexclusive.com.